Good evening, YouTube. Please excuse the terrible lighting and the shaky camera. I'm shooting this one from the comfort of my bed because it's been a long few days and I keep forgetting that I needed to make this video. Update on progress for New Zealand. First of all, slight correction from my last video. I said that the letter that the Nursing Midwifery Council issues as standard, the statement of entry, isn't sufficient for the Nursing Council of New Zealand for their requirements. I was actually wrong about that. They have accepted it. It's just the wording of the email is very confusing, but they do accept that, so you don't need to get them to do another one. However, moving on. Progress in the world of moving to NZ. So we've engaged the services of a company called Working in New Zealand, who like all immigration experts, do not come cheap. We have paid them £1,800 so far of a total bill of $3,600. That's on top of the visa fees. Now, they are an interesting company because they not only do the visa application, manage the process of getting you into the country, getting your residency visa once you get there. They also have a recruitment agency who secured me a job interview, at which apparently I did very well because I've been offered a job in Auckland, potentially accelerating our time frame significantly because they don't want to wait until August. They would like me there by the end of May. So things have now got to the point where we're starting to move very, very quickly. So this is where this video series, I suspect, is going to get interesting. Well, we're going to start talking about the work that we're having to do to get this done because, my God, there's a lot to take into account. We were going to convert our UK home to a buy-to-let and use it for an income, and there are a very few lenders that will do that. HSBC has an expat lending branch, they will do that, but most mortgage lenders will not let you have a buy-to-let property if you're not UK resident yourself. So I kind of shared this as a point of discussion in a closed group that Working in New Zealand has for people who are wanting to move out there. And the response, apart from one person who had a really good experience doing the same thing, and they had theirs with the Halifax, I think they said, the overwhelming majority of responses were, we did this, we had a complete nightmare, we had tenants who didn't pay the rent, and there was nothing we could do about it because the local agent was useless and we weren't in the country, and we lost a huge amount of money and the house got trashed and yada, 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 yada. Lots of stories of that nature. So we are 90% settled that we're not going to do that now. Effectively, it looks like we'll be selling the house. Now, unfortunately, because we need equity to fund this move, that means we've got to remortgage knowing that we're going to sell the house. Now, this puts us in an interesting position. Because we know we're going to sell the house, we can look at remortgaging to an interest-only mortgage to drop our mortgage payments down to zilch, and obviously look for a mortgage with no early repayment fees because we're going to want to pay it off as soon as we sell. That potentially is a better way of doing it because it attracts no capital gains, whereas if we convert the house to a buy-to-let, then suddenly it becomes liable to capital gains, and that's a big chunk of change on a house that's £325,000 house. So next steps, sort remortgage, talk to probably the same brokerage to talk about when we're going to sell the house, organise shipping, potentially at least a 20-foot shipping container, potentially a 10-foot as well. It's entirely possible we'll need two because we've got a lot of stuff to take with us. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you can't ship your belongings to New Zealand until you have a visa and you live there. Otherwise, you've got to pay duty and excises on everything you bring in. If you're bringing in your own belongings and you're resident in New Zealand, you don't pay those taxes. So effectively, we have to pay for those containers, pay to store them, pay to ship them, then pay to store them at the other end, because of course when we get there, the kind of best option is to live in an Airbnb for a month, because that's hopefully by the time we get there, the managed isolation and quarantine won't be going on, and we'll just have to self-isolate for 7 days in an Airbnb. That's the hope, because the MIQ, the managed isolation and quarantine fees, are eye-watering. We'd be potentially adding another £10,000 to our cost just to pay for the four of us, me, my wife, my two daughters, to go into MIQ for the required period. But hopefully that's all being phased out, he says, just as the new African variant of the virus is kicking off. Interesting bit of news as well is the emergency residency visa applications. If we're in the country and I'm working before July, we can apply for that, and that might mean that I'll get residency within a year. And that's a process that otherwise would take at least 2, and they're not actually processing other residency visas at the moment. And that would be good, because in New Zealand you can't buy a house until you have a residency visa. And that means obviously once we sell this place, we'll use the equity we need to use, but we are then going to have a lot of money just sat there, and that's not good. I don't want to leave money just sat there doing nothing. So that's where we are so far. Obviously, the next step is figuring out exactly where we're going to be living. It looks for us to be sort of the west side of Auckland, because that's where the office for my new job is going to be. We've got to sort out, flights, what we do about the cat. There's £1,000 in itself to take a cat out there, and that's assuming you can find someone who will rent you a property that will accept pets. Things are getting moving. I'm going to do a more kind of detailed description later on, but as of right now, we've got a plan. We're starting to get the documents together for the visa advisor. Things are ticking on, so yeah, watch this space. I will be back soon.